we got married and we did it the traditional way. Basically running from myself. To be truthful, I had not been around so many black people in my life. New house, new atmosphere, all that. I just still wasn't happy. And so when I moved out, because I still wasn't happy, we had to get a divorce. It was really ugly. So she gets out the car crying and I'm crying, that she has to go. One of my neighbors told me that the sheriff was looking for me. He came to the car and just took her out. He's chasing us down the street. A couple times he would come over and, spend the night. Hello. Welcome back to They Just Don't Understand. And your host is me, Nina Mitchell. I want to talk about something that may be a little uncomfortable, but it has to be shared. I have 4 daughters, and they're all by 4 different men. The last daughter I had, we got married, and we did it the traditional way. The traditional way. Basically meaning we did it biblically, like not having sex or anything before marriage, and just what I would say the right way. And I hadn't done that before, so I said, well, this is going to be different. And it was very different. And when I got married to my youngest daughter's dad, I really didn't know how to be married. I didn't really know what it really took to be a wife. I mean, I knew how to treat a man good. I knew, that type of thing. But I didn't know what marriage was really built on, the foundation of it. And we were married for 7 years. He was a very good provider. We got a beautiful daughter out of it. But I wasn't ready. I was still running from myself. And then when times got a little difficult, and not necessarily difficult, it was just that, let me see, how can I explain this? It was, he was an older man, and I still had a lot of play in me. I can say it like that. I didn't really like staying at home and watching Price is Right or Jeopardy or The Wheel of Fortune. I was bored, to be truthful with it. And I took it as long as I could. So one day, I decided to move. I was going to move to Atlanta. And the reason was because daughter number 2 had gotten out of the military and was staying with my first husband. And that one we'll talk about another time, because that marriage, that wedding reception, everything, I'll get back to that one. But I want to share this with you because for those of you who want to be married, you really have to put yourself in position and know that it's really for a lifetime. You have to take the good with the bad. But I had seen my mom, being married like 4 or 5 times. I used to tease her and call her Elizabeth Taylor and, stuff like that. So I didn't know that had been, instilled in me. If someone made you mad or you didn't get your way or whatever the case may be, just get up and leave. So, like I said, we were married for 7 years, and one day I just started packing up things. And he would ask me, well, where are you sending these boxes to? And I said, oh, I'm just taking them to the Goodwill or Salvation Army. But I was really shipping them to my first husband, who my daughter had gotten out of the military, the second daughter. She was living with him. So I was shipping the boxes down there. I didn't take any TVs. I just took our clothes and essentials. And so I packed up. I probably did that for about 4 to 6 months. It was just a plan. I had planned for someone to get my vehicle. I had it shipped down. I mean, everything was just scripted out. I had everything organized and planned. And now what I want to say about him is he definitely was a good provider. It was me. I wasn't ready. I just wasn't ready. I like I said, I had a lot of old me still inside. And I did not I didn't know, all the responsibilities that came with marriage. Now, granted, I didn't really have to do anything. I was a kept woman. I didn't have to wash cars. I didn't have to mow lawns. I didn't have to take the trash out. I didn't have to do anything. I really didn't. I was really a kept woman. And I'm smiling because being a kept woman with the right person is very honorable. So I just don't want to come off sounding like he was a bad guy, because he was not. It was all me. So as I was saying, I would ship boxes, to Atlanta, and I was going to go down there and live because my daughter had gotten out the military, and she was, going through some things with my first husband. And so I said, well, I'm going to move down. And I was just basically running from myself, leaving Seattle, running from myself. I was tired of it. I just didn't like Seattle anymore. And I just said, let me just run away to Atlanta. But what I didn't realize is that when I ran away, that I was still with me. I ran away with myself. So I get to Atlanta, and we stayed with my first husband for a little bit, and then that got kind of janky. I mean, seriously, it really did. And I ended up finding a house right around the corner, and it was owned by some people from Spokane, Washington. So we lived there, and I got it all set up, and, we were fine. And one day, my husband, the only one that I had, my husband called and said that he wanted us all to come back to Seattle, back to Washington for Christmas. And so I agreed, and he bought us all tickets, and we all went back, me and the two girls that I had, the one that graduated from Spelman, she's daughter number 3, and then his child that we had together. So we went back, and, he was talking about, let's work things out, let's do this, let's do that. And I wasn't going for it, because to be truthful, I had not been around so many black people in my life. And I was sprung. I was like, no, I don't want to live back here in Washington. I'm staying where I'm at. So we ended up coming back, and shortly thereafter, he sold the house. And the buyers gave him a lot more than he was selling it for if he could be out by a certain time. So we kind of I can't even say that word. We reconciled, and he moved down with us. And so when he came into the place that we were residing in, he was like, oh, you're really here to stay? And I said, yeah, this is where I'm going to be. And he didn't, it was on let me see, what side of town was that? I want to say the west side. Yeah, the west side. And he didn't really, care for that side. But, we had fun while we were there. Our neighbors across the street were always barbecuing, and, they had their beer and their music. And when I first moved there, it was just me and my two girls. I would just sit on, because they have the outside closed-in porch. So I would sit there and just watch them and see all the fun. I was too embarrassed to just go over there. I was still trying to get a feel for everything. So one day, I got invited over there because they were grilling on the sidewalk, and I was like, I've never seen this, I was just into myself. I just had seen things I had never seen before. I've always seen people grilling in their backyard, but never on the sidewalk, So once I went over, and tasted some of their food that was on the grill, oh, I was sprung from that point on. And then I ended up always being over there too. And so when my husband, he decided that after he sold the house, he was going to move down to Atlanta also. So like I said, okay, I want to take a brief second while you're watching this video to introduce the new line and also the grand opening of my store. Whittlesoil.com now has the storefront, and I'll provide you with that later on the social websites. This one is Azure Coast. This one is really a good seller, and it smells really good. It smells good. It just smells tropical to me. And then the other one that's a really good seller is this one that's called baby powder. And when I say baby powder, I mean baby powder. It really is. So just a quick little ad here to tell you that you can click the link below to whittlesoil.com and find out what other products that I have here inside the store. And you can still order online. So you can also stop by the store in Lakewood, Washington, or you can still order online. And thanks again for watching the video. See you soon. So unfortunately, the battery died. So we're going to continue where I left off at. So my husband moved down to Atlanta. He saw the place we were living in, and he decided that we should buy a house. So we bought a house in Douglasville. It's about 20 minutes, 25 minutes from Atlanta. And it was a beautiful house. It was really nice. And, you know, we just decorated it, and he painted the walls, and, you know, it was home. But I still wasn't happy. I still was not happy. And I ended up getting a job in Paulding County as a substitute teacher, because this teacher had went on maternity leave. So I was hired until she returned. And to be truthful, I really did not know what I was doing. And the teachers' aides that were in the classroom, they took advantage of that. And it ended up kind of bad too, whereas my husband at the time that moved down there, he had, let me back up a little bit. So when we were together, I left the house that he bought for us. I left. I just still wasn't happy. And I got an apartment in Douglasville, but a little bit away from where he was. So he stayed in that house, and I'm not sure what happened, if he foreclosed or whatever, but, you know, I just moved out. I just left. I still wasn't happy. I just, new house, new atmosphere, all that. I just still wasn't happy. And like I said, I still had a few little wild oaks I had to get out. But prior to that, before we bought the house in Douglasville, we would come over to the house that I used to live in and hang out with the people across the street. And that's when I met a younger guy, and we kind of clicked. And my daughter that was in the military, it was her boyfriend's friend, and she was totally against it. She was like, no. So just speaking about this now, I always said I'd never been a cheater, but this is my confession. So we exchanged numbers. We didn't talk for maybe a couple weeks. We didn't have any type of communication, but we had each other's number. And like I said, I was still married at the time, but I wasn't happy. So when I left the home that we bought, it was a beautiful home too, in Douglasville, I left and got an apartment, and I was working in Paulding County. And the guy that I had exchanged numbers with, he wasn't working his job. Let me slow down. The place he worked was close by the school that I worked at. And so after work, I would go to his job site, and on his job site, you know, you have to drive down in the woods a little bit because he was a soil engineer. And so one day when I came home, my husband said, why is all this red, because Georgia's ground, their dirt is, I call it red clay. He said, why is all this red on the tires? I said, oh, because at the school they're doing construction. Just lying. And so I would be down, down on his job site, hanging out with him. And on his lunch break, we would go down there and he would fish, and I would just hang out, and then I would go home. And so my husband didn't believe that construction part. He just didn't say anything. And things just started getting, worse after that. And then now that's when I moved out. And so when I moved out, because I still wasn't happy, I got my own apartment. Now, we had our daughter together there, and so we would do, she would come and stay with me for a little bit, and come and stay with him, and then it got to the point where we had to get a divorce, and that was ugly. It was really ugly, because once he moved out of the house, he moved around the corner. Now, around the corner was a little bit around the way, but it was just like directly behind me. So when he would pick up our daughter, he would question her so much about what I was doing. He knows I have a boyfriend, and he just put her in such a vulnerable state that it just kind of wrecked her a little bit, because she didn't want to lie. She didn't really know what to say. She was only like 7 or 8, and he was just questioning her, and he would get mad at her if she wouldn't tell him the truth. And so this went on for quite some time, and then finally he filed for the divorce, not me. And so when he filed for the divorce in Georgia, they don't give you a divorce right away. They give you a legal separation for a year in case you reconcile your marriage. But what we did was we split all the banking information. Everything was separate and all that. So still, Aja was going back and forth with her dad and me, and being questioned all the time. And then it got to the point where we would have a meeting place to pick up and drop off. And this one particular day, she was in the car, and it was time for her dad to, pull up, and she get in his car. And she cried the whole time. She said, "Mom, I do not want to go with my dad." And I said, "Well, Aja, there's nothing I could do." And she cried so much that she had a little brown bag in the back seat of the car and a lot of tissue. And that bag was filled up with tissue. I even saved that bag for a long time. Her little cry, her tears in that bag. And it just hurt me so bad. So when he pulled up, she was like, "I'm not going with you. You're always questioning me about Mom." And she just let him have her true feelings, and he didn't like that. But so she had to go anyway, because when he got angry, he was angry. He never, we never got into any physical altercations or nothing like that. It was just a controlling situation where he knew that I love my daughter so much that I would do anything, to keep her. So he was just upset that she didn't want to go, and that he couldn't have any control over me through her. So she gets out the car crying, and I'm crying, that she has to go. So one day she was going to a school out there in Douglasville, and I had just got tired of it. I just really, she didn't want to be there, and it was just, she just didn't like it. So one day, the school bus, it was a school day, the school buses had pulled up. And I was there prior, and at that time it wasn't daylight saving time, it was dark. And so I was in the car that we had when we moved down there. Well, we had two. We had SUV, 80-bar SUV, and then we had a Ford Taurus. So he took the SUV, of course, and gave me the Ford Taurus to drive. And so I pulled up before the buses came. And it's funny how I'm going to explain this, because I had my hair pulled back in a ponytail, and I had on all black because it was dark anyway. And so then when her bus pulled up, I just was standing there, right there by the bus as she got off. And I said, "Come on, baby, come with me." And only one person saw that. And so I took her with me, and I took her back to Atlanta. That's where I had moved, because I had got tired of living around the corner from him because it was just too much drama. So I moved all the way back to, found a place in Atlanta. And what happened, no, actually, I was still in Douglasville because one day one of my neighbors told me that the sheriff was looking for me. And I was like, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, what kind of trouble am I in? So, what the school had done, they considered it kidnapping and any other kind of violent crime that you could think of. I mean, I wasn't doing any drugs, I wasn't an alcoholic, I wasn't anything. I just wasn't his wife anymore, and he didn't like that. So, I took her and I lived in Douglasville for a minute. And then I just got tired of all the back and forth. And that's when I moved to Atlanta and took her with me. And I said, no, you don't have to go back. You don't have to go back. So he was real furious about that. And oh boy, we had back and forth conversations. And it just was really ugly. So I enrolled her in a pre-K school over there. And I just cut off all communication with him. But one day before I moved to Atlanta, I was picking her up from school, and we were supposed to make a trade-off. So we met at the library, and she was sitting, I had a convertible at that time, and she was sitting in the car, and she didn't want to go. And so he came to the car and just took her out, and then she got back in my car. And so we're driving down the street, and he's chasing us down the street, calling me all kind of names, and so it was that kind of drama. So let's get past that. I moved to Atlanta, like I said previously, and she went with me. And at that time, I was still seeing. Now I started seeing this young man, and we were seeing each other quite often. And Aja knew him. She wasn't too familiar with him, it wasn't her dad, and, she accepted it, but truthfully, she told me later on in life that she really didn't feel a good thing about him. And so he worked in, I think, Augusta, and we lived in Atlanta, so his job would put him up, at the Partridge Inn in Augusta for the week. And then on the weekends, he would come and stay with us in Atlanta. And, that worked out pretty good. And now that I'm telling this story, I want to tell you how this came about, how I got tricked into being where I was. Now, I hope this doesn't really confuse you, because as I'm telling it, I'm thinking and going back and forth. Now, when I lived around the corner from my youngest daughter's dad, I was seeing this guy, right? And after a couple times he would come over and, spend the night and, do all that kind of stuff. There was one day Aja wasn't in the house. She had gone to school, or she was with her dad or something. And he was just laying on the bed, and I had, the bedroom had a bathroom right there inside of the bedroom. That makes sense. There was a bathroom connected to the bedroom, okay? And so I was taking a shower, and I came out of the shower, and there was a surprise waiting for me on the bed.